Well, we are being warned Australia's green energy transition is happening back to front. The Albanese government has set an ambitious target of net zero by 2050, meaning traditional, reliable fossil fuels are being phased out before the renewable energy system is ready. Chris Bowen says everything is going to be cheaper with renewables, yet electricity prices went up 25% from July 1 last year. A bit ironic from a government who promised your bill would go down by $275. So our question for the jury is, are we transitioning to green energy too quickly? Joining me now to discuss this is Nationals MP and former Deputy Prime Minister Danica Joyce and Greens Senator David Shoebridge. Great to see you both. Thank you so much for joining us. David, we'll start with you. The energy market operator says coal generation will have exited the system in 15 years, yet Australia will not be able to build and install enough renewable energy generation to meet the target of 43% emissions reduction by 2030. Are we seriously ready for this transition?
Well, we've got no choice. We have to be ready. And I know your introduction said that coal is the most reliable. Actually, if you look over the last few summers, our very ageing coal-fired power fleet are the least reliable energy sources. They're the ones that are going out when it gets really hot because they're like 40, 50, 60 years old. The most reliable energy we have, the most dependable, is our solar and wind. The cheapest that we have, including in the last summer, the cheapest has been solar and wind. Renewables are driving prices down. If you want unreliable power, if you want to see blackouts in southeast Queensland, then just pretend that these old clunker coal-fired power stations are going to carry on, because they're not. The energy market regulator says they're the least reliable. So we've got no choice. We've got to build it. It's the cheapest thing we can build. It's the most reliable in the long term, and it's actually bloody good for the climate.
Well, it's $1.5 trillion in the next decade. It's not cheap.
Well, we have a very large economy. We've got a large continent, and we're going to be building an energy system that our kids and our grandkids and their kids can actually reliably depend upon. We have the benefit of all the investment that our great-great-grandparents put into the network. And thanks for them, we've had great, cheap power. That investment has run down, and we need to invest for the future now. OK,
Barnaby, over to you now. David's just said that the coal that we've got at the moment, it is unreliable. Where do you sit on this? Are we facing a blackout right now?
Well, I'm going to call rubbish on everything David just said. Let's start from position number one. Renewables are not cheap. Renewables are incredibly expensive. And the way to test the rhetoric is to look at your bill. Your power bill is going through the roof as renewables accelerate up. And the reason for that, obviously, is the intermittency and the way power is sold. It's sold in 5-minute blocks. So sometimes when the wind's not there and the sun is not shining, the price of that power goes through the roof because it's just not there. So to replace something that's not working with more things that don't work is a real sign of lunacy. Well, what we have, just itself, Net Zero Australia, which is a green group, says that the cost to get to our 2030 target is $1.5 trillion. That's $1,500 billion. That's $1,500 million. And the 2050 target, this is their words, $7 to $8 trillion.
Wow.
That is more than the recapitalisation, the rebuilding of Western Europe after the Second World War in today's monetary terms.
Right.
So let's dispense with this being cheap. And the next thing you have to say is let's look at some of the examples right at the moment. Yep. See, for there to be, you've got to compare apples with apples. Yep. So you've got to compare 24/7 coal-fired power or 24/7 nuclear power with intermittent power. And the way you make intermittent power 24/7 is to have batteries or pump hydro. And let's look at one of them. Snowy Hydro 2.0.
Yeah.
It started at $2 billion. It's now $12 billion and going north.
OK, and that's
not cheap.
That is a big cost. Do we have the infrastructure in place? That's the key here.
Well, that's what happens when you have the coalition stuffing up an energy transition. Snowy 2.0 is a coalition plan, never well designed, not part of a broader scheme. And so when Barnaby voted for it and said it was a great idea, it was because they didn't have an overarching plan for renewables. We want to have a system where the cheapest renewables are built, the cheapest storage is built, not some sort of captain's pick that Barnaby or his Liberal Prime Minister may want, but we want to have one where we get the cheapest storage. Now, the cheapest storage is pumped hydro. Right. Not necessarily in some big mega project that Barnaby can cut some ribbon on, but in distributed pumped in distributed storage, in distributed battery, and we know, not from me, but from the experts, from the market regulators who look at it.
If the experts are right, we wouldn't have a power crisis.
Are wrong, but on one hand, you want to rely upon their evidence. On the other hand, you want to reject it.
There's not a country in the world that does it with 100% renewables.
Our energy market regulator says renewables and storage, distributed storage, is the cheapest way to keep the lights on.
Let's look at the reality of this. We can't actually make the capital. All this stuff is 100% imported. We can't actually, the companies that run it are not running it because they want to help our environment. Chinese real estate companies are not running it because they want to help our environment. It's a swindle. They're running it because they make a massive buck.
Well,
they make a massive buck. And this idea that somehow Australia will be completely different, and even though the price is going through the roof, even though it's going to continue to become more and more fake, even though we're having brownouts, even though they're shutting off people's air conditioners because there's enough power, and now you're saying we're going to have more pump renewables.
Are we in a situation where we've got the Nationals politicians saying we need to find corporations that are doing it for love? Is that what you're saying? We need to find corporations that are going to invest in renewables for love.
Multinational organisations.
I'm a Green senator, right? I'm a Green senator. I don't think you're going to find a bunch of multinationals who are going to do it for love. If you think they're around, then great. They're obviously going to do it because they think it's the most reliable way of investing their capital to make a fair return and to make a long fair return.
Because it's
none of them.
The capital return.
But they need to do that quickly, though. That's the problem.
The capital return is underpinned by the government.
Let me have a go.
We have multinational organisations that are guaranteed a rate of return by Chris Bowen. They borrow the money at 4.5%.
Let me respond.
I want to go to the...
Take a breath.
All right. I want to go to the jury on this because...
But can I just say this? There's not a single corporation that will invest in coal-fired power stations, and that's not because they believe in renewable energy. That's not because they hate coal. It's because they know it's a stinker.
Let me go to the jury now and get
240 of them in China. China's building them flat out.
Julie in the middle. Okay, it's a fine-up debate. Julie, how are you feeling about our push to renewables?
Well, first of all, let's park the politics. Park the politics because we do have choices. We do have choices. We can press the pause button but still progress. People want to know in Australia, and look, the vast majority of Australians believe in doing the right thing about the environment. They want renewables, but they want it to be balanced. They want the discussion to be everything on the table. Why don't we have nuclear on the table? Why can't we? What's the problem with it? Why can't we look at who are these people investing in the solar power? These are all questions people want sensible, calm, balanced debate.
Absolutely. Tom, we'll throw it to you. How are you feeling about the push to renewables?
I think it's happening too quickly.
Okay.
I think renewables is part of the discussion, but it's not the whole part.
Yeah.
And we should be looking at nuclear, especially if we're getting nuclear subs.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're almost out of time, but just very quickly, nuclear has to be part of this discussion.
Well, it absolutely doesn't, because the UK... Well, no, by all means, talk about it, right? Look at the evidence. Look at the evidence. Look at what has happened in the UK. They have been trying for 2 decades to open up one nuclear power station. It's more than $30 billion Australian. If you want to pay 5 times for your electricity, vote nuclear, because that's how much it'll cost.
Well, 10 seconds.
Obviously,
5 times the electricity.
They can't say that France, England, Canada, the United States, China, Scandinavia, all these countries are stupid,
all right, look,
and we're the only smart ones.
This is a brilliant fire-up debate and really good points by both of our panellists, but you've both had time to have your say. So now it's time to call on the jury. The question is, are we transitioning to renewable energy too fast?
Where's the river?
We should have the whole world is going to
100%.
Time is up. What is the jury's verdict? Wow. OK, so an overwhelming... Everyone said yes, bar one. So 11 yes, 1 no. Susan, why no?
Oh, well, I mean, I've probably said to like, live in Canberra, and I bus, and I have a small house, and I don't generate a lot of electricity. Like, I could get a solar panel if I wanted. There's people in my street that have it. So, like, I'm happy where I live to transition to more green energy, but I am anti-nuclear because I don't want to have like a nuclear accident.
Yeah. OK. And what about you, Agnes? You said yes. Why?
Because I don't think we've heard the whole story. Chris Bowen doesn't come and talk to anybody about anything. And I think nuclear has to be on the table.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, I know you're very anti-nuclear, but do you concede that it's going to form part of our discussion?
Not in any rational decision. You can talk about it.
But governments are going to come out and have to discuss this.
It costs 5 times the amount to get nuclear power than it does. It costs
keep
$30
on-
billion.
they keep on
in
saying
fact,
this. It's not
we
correct.
have a jury member from the ACT. One of the reasons the jury member from the ACT is no doubt persuaded about renewables is because the ACT has 100% renewables and their power prices have gone
20
down.
seconds last
Their
word,
power
okay,
prices have gone down. No, it's embarrassing and
what is
awkward.
happening in
It's the
regional
truth.
areas is that we are absolutely getting overrun with wind factories, solar factories, transmission lines.
Okay.
So what?
But you love it
Well,
on
you know what? This is one of those debates
is an
where we could be
industrial
talking about
landscape
it for a
us,
very
and
long
our lives are being
time.
pulled apart.
Barnaby, we love the
Danica.
passion on it. Barnaby Joyce, David Shoebridge, great to speak with you both. Thank you so much for that fired up panel.